Okay, so I did my infographic and I'm doing my presentation on anxiety and depression in young adults across different cultures. And the reason I chose to do this is because I know how big of a deal mental health is, at least for me, and just for what I've seen a lot within my generation. So I kind of wanted to see like if it was similar throughout different cultures because I feel like I've only seen it through a perspective in the United States, but also still didn't know much about that. So I kind of started to compare how it's different between young adults in the US and Spain. And anxiety and depression are two of the most common mental illnesses as they affect an estimated 284 million people worldwide. But the biggest age group that is affected is young adults between ages 18 to 29. And globally, 1 in 10 young adults suffer from anxiety and depression, but among those that are diagnosed, only 75% remain untreated for their disorders. And this percentage comes from a bunch of different reasons that I'm going to talk about. But I first wanted to just go over and compare the different factors that influence anxiety and depression because as we talked about in class, I was seeing how there was a lot of differences between cultures on um, based on like their social values and religion and cultural values on how mental health is perceived and diagnosed. So, with the United States, it shows that the biggest factors that influence anxiety, depression in young adults are academics, fitting in socially, pressure to be involved and be good in sports and extracurricular activities, and society's beauty norms, like fitting in those norms. And as you can see down here, I kind of listed some statistics I found for that. So 61% of young adults felt like the pressure to get good grades, 29% felt the pressure to look good, 28% felt the pressure to be good at sports or extracurricular activities, and 21% felt pressure to fit in socially. But then in Spain, I actually saw a lot of different factors that cause anxiety, depression in young teens, and a lot of it's negative family environment, unemployment, relationship changes, supporting your family, and poor perceived physical health. So as you can see, there's a lot of different factors depending on the cultures of each of these. And on my paper, I definitely want to go in more detail and explain the why these factors are so different in each country. But then moving down, I also something that really interested me is how mental health is perceived across cultures because I know it started to become more accepted in the United States as now you're seeing like a lot of social media movements about it and people are talking about it a lot more, but it's still looked at in a negative light. But in Spain, I was also seeing that just recently, so mental health is starting to become more accepted, and there's more awareness being created for it. So it shows that we're like moving in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And again, highlighting the statistic again that 75% of people do not receive treatment for anxiety, depression. And there was a lot of information about why, which I also want to go in more in my paper, but just talked about how people are embarrassed about it, scared to lose their jobs, don't want people to treat them differently. So I thought that was really interesting that people will purposefully not receive help, even though it could actually help them in a lot of social settings. But then I highlighted this quote from an article showing that this points the need for psychology to continue to educate the public so that more people understand that there's no shame being associated being with mentally ill. And just to show like 75% of these people don't get treated, and with the fact that this impacts so much of our society, and so that many people, like all these people around you could be suffering through the same thing, but everyone is ashamed to admit it. So I think it's just a lot more moving forward. How I highlighted here, awareness, education, acceptance needs to be promoted for the future. And I want to go into more of that in my paper on how exactly we can do that, because also it varies between different cultures how you're going to promote this awareness and educate people for the future. So I'm really excited to go more into this topic on my paper, but this is just an overview of what I decided to include in my infographic.